Namaste. Welcome back, beautiful souls, to Decks I Recommend. And in this episode, I will be sharing with you some thoughts on decks for beginners and what I find important when you are beginning your tarot journey. Left to right, these decks are The Spirit Within by Stephen Bright, Ari Weisner's Trinity Tarot. This is the Wayhome Tarot by Bakara Wintner and art by Amy Whitehurst. And this is the Lili Black Tarot by Celia Melville. The Spirit Within Tarot is one that I have been recommending in beginner tarot courses for a long time. It does not come with black edges. I did that with a marker for several reasons. One is that it is somewhat color coded, and I will get to that in a moment. Certainly the minor arcana is color coded. The majors do not necessarily match by the same color coding. Also, the silhouette feature takes away most of the issues around diversity that can arise in many tarot decks, where we see various nationalities, lack of diversity in gender identification, and all kinds of things like that. So it has a lot of really good points. It's a very accessible deck and quite simple in its representation. The deck creator is from the UK, so you may recognize some of the scenes from certain settings in the London area or various places in the UK. However, for the most part, it has a very universal appeal to its settings. And even here, this could be many places in the world. So I really like this deck, and I think it makes it very accessible for beginners. Another important point here, and I want to talk a little bit about contemporary decks, where we see modern dress, bicycles, things like that. Interesting. We have looks like a bit of an older sailing ship here. Contemporary decks can be a bit of a problem when the art is in full focus. It becomes very specific. We can tend to get locked into an issue based on the details in the scene. And I'm thinking of a couple of decks. One is the Urban Tarot. So that one is set in New York, and it has some amazing cards. However, when I'm looking at a kindergarten teacher in a classroom as one of the court cards, it's very hard to get away from that. Or I'm looking at a drug addict or a real estate agent or a conductor. Sometimes that level of specificity is too much in a reading. When we are learning the tarot, it is important to keep things as open-ended and generic as possible. Part of the process of learning the tarot is learning the archetypes of the major arcana. Now, in this case, the Emperor represents the sign of Aries. It is the element of fire, and it does match the suit of wands. However, there are some fire cards that are not in this color, the Tower being one. So the Tower it's a Mars card. You don't need to know that as a beginner, but it's connected to the element of fire as well too. And we see that it is red. It's taking on its own energy, which is a great color for that card. There are several cards in this deck that look very different from the art of Pamela Coleman Smith, the Arthur Waite deck, known as the RWS, or the Waite Smith Tarot. And this is one of them. However, I really like this and find the energy of this card easy to read. I know that when this powerful dance pose is released, that all of these swords are going to come flying off the back of this person who is perhaps regaining a great deal of strength They are standing up and they will walk away. Now, all of this information we can gain through knowing more details, more esoteric associations. But I think what Stephen has captured here is really brilliant. What Stephen did with the Sun card is just magnificent. I feel the energy, the healing energy of the rising sun, the sacredness of connecting to this source energy. I just find this just such a brilliant card. I think there's lots of stories we can make up with this deck as well, too. We know this is a card of water. There is a bridge, there is water. There is perhaps sadness in this card. And what I like about this is that while Stephen has retained some of the important symbols in the card, the setting, the situation, it feels more open-ended than in the Waite-Smith Tarot. This can be a problematic deck in the tarot because often it is drawn without a person in the deck. So it's one of the few cards in the illustrated tarot that has only the element, the 8 wands. And here we see a figure. So there's more of a sense of energy and movement. And we also see the sun in the background. We know that something is happening, and it's happening energetically and quickly. The Ten of Cups is a card of completion, emotional fulfillment. It is one of sunsets and happiness, and often mixed emotions. However, in this card, we see 2 humans and 2 dogs. And I feel that people might be able to connect to this image more than what we see in some of the classic artwork. This deck just feels so very beginner friendly. And I will continue to recommend it in my beginner tarot courses and to anyone who is starting their tarot journey. The Spirit Within by Stephen Bright. In each of these videos, I'm sharing with you 2 mass market and 2 self-published decks. The first was a mass market, and this is a self-published deck called the Lili Black Tarot by Celia Millsville. And I did show the white version of this in an earlier episode. This one does come with black edges. I believe it's printed on black core cardstock. The black version of this deck reveals many things that you cannot see in the white version. It reveals textures and almost makes some of the pictures look like chalk paintings. This is a very special deck that captures the energy of the archetypes and the elements very well. The water cards, you can feel the energy of the water in the minor arcana, though it may look very pippish. There is movement, sigils, different arrangements of the cups, wands, swords, and pentacles that give you brilliant clues as to what is going on in the card. Love the reflection of the 2 cups in the water here. The Lili White and the Lili Black are not exact copies of each other. They feel in some way like very different decks. And I feel that pippish decks that don't have a lot going on with humans in them, can sometimes be a lot easier to interpret than ones with very specific situations, as I was saying earlier, with the kindergarten teacher or the drug addict and so forth. And here we can get clues and cues from the movement of the water, the colors, the positioning of the cups, and so forth. With this King of Cups, we see that all is not revealed. The King of Cups is hiding behind something. There's something being held back while they may be the master of the suit. All is not entirely clear, and I think sometimes that's hard to understand in other King of Cup cards. Let's go to a different suit. And in the black deck, we get a very special coloration in this 6 of Swords card. And we can see very clearly the portal, the magic, the mystery that lies beyond. And we also see much better the water that hits up against the edges of this walkway here. I strongly believe that beginners should not steer away from pip decks. It's really important to learn about the energy of numbers and how the arrangement of the symbol on the card can carry a meaning. And here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 below, and then we have another one above. So we have a large one over 4. And so by both learning something about the order of the numbers and really basic numerology, and then looking at the arrangement of the element on the page, there's a lot that we can speak to. I think this Five of Pentacles is quite poignant. We can see the snow falling, maybe stars in the sky. Two plants have grown together, both bowing their heads. There's a sense of humility. Something under the ground is informing where we are. You can see by the bowed heads, there may be a sense of sadness. There may be a sense of coldness. You will have learned that all fives present a challenge of sorts, and yet together they create this heart shape that grows from a previous experience. You could even speak to the idea of 3 and 2, and that comes up actually in quite a few different cards, or we can look at the arrangement to find more information. Here in the 10 of Pentacles, we see the fulfillment of the suit, all of these beautiful flowers on the plant. It's almost as if we can sense the next stage, that the seeds will burst forth to carry on. There's the ace there, the next generation of the plant. The Hanged Man is just stunning in this version of the deck. And look at the energy emerging from the ears. This snake has bit the Hanged Man, and this is another energy that is being released here. And yet the head there's some energy in the head. If you turn it over, you can see that the head is not loosely hanging back. There's some strength. There's a reflection that's going on. I think that Celia has done a really, really good job with this deck. The Hermit inside the hollow tree looks like a womb, a place to recover, to learn, to know, to connect. And the I wonder if I can find the 7 of Swords. Yes, let's look at these two. So this is the 6 of Swords, and we see the laurel wreath here, and this beautiful light in the background, one wand rising above. But here in the 7 of Wands, we have a very different energy. It's raining, and yet the light burns bright. You know how they say a picture paints 1,000 words? Here's another one, almost as if there's a waterfall that we are going through. I get that feeling with this deck that these pictures have so much to share, and the luminescence of these cards is really extraordinary. There are a couple of Tower cards that are my Tower cards of all time, and this is one of them. I really feel the sense of vulnerability here. This elk has lost their rack. There is lightning in the background. There is a storm, a real sense of vulnerability. And yet, in losing that rack, there is a new lightness of being. And I find sometimes some decks, it's really hard to find connection to a story. And this, this deck really kind of makes it easy. Here we have 7 flowers, and you can see some of the spores starting to move, energy going forth, that nature will find its way. There is nothing we have to do. This life force will carry on above and below. So yeah, this is a deck you will absolutely find connection with. The Lili Black Tarot by Celia Melville. This little square deck is called the Trinity Tarot. And for a number of reasons, I think this is an amazing beginner deck. One is that it's little and you could take it with you just like flashcards. But because the minors are all pips, this is a deck that is going to really have you thinking about number and element. And really all we need to do in a tarot reading is add together in a sentence what 7 plus fire means. And also, Ari has very carefully given us a close replication of a more detailed pictorial image. I'm thinking of the one in the Pamela Coleman Smith artwork, where we have 1 wand over and 6 below. So there's something about this deck that shows the essence of the meaning without having to have any people in the card. And like I said, the tiny size, these decks are about, so this is about 3 inches by 3 inches, just a little bit less. Let's measure. This is 7.5, 7.6 centimeters square. The inner eye is lit up here. It's like this is a card of rebirth. There are several name changes in this deck. The knights are known as the champion of the suit. The pages, rather than being pages, are apprentices. And I think that's very clear in its meaning. The crown of the suit is similar to the king of the suit. And the queens are keepers. And this is a really beautiful descriptor for the queens, the ones that hold space for the element, create the environment, a supporting environment for the development of the element. All the key symbols are here. I think this card in general has been done very well in many pip decks where we don't see full illustration, if you will, with the energy that is growing or focused between the connection of these 3 wands. This one's really good. I'm thinking of the Wild Unknown Tarot as well, too. There's a few that 3 of Wands seems to be a favorite among artists doing pip decks. There are several decks like this out there on the market. And as a beginner student of tarot, I think it's really important that you have one of these so that you can begin to focus more on your complete network of information between the symbols in the card, the number on the card, and how the elements themselves are arranged on the card. Having a deck like this, or learning with a deck like this, or if this is your second deck, maybe you're using the Waite-Smith Tarot as your primary deck, but you have a deck like this, it forces you to learn how to weave these bits of the tarot together rather than memorizing canned meanings. I think that we can perhaps progress quite quickly in memorizing a little white book, and then it can all go to hell in a handbasket because another deck does it differently, doesn't look anything like the memorized meaning, because we haven't taken time to learn what the water element represents, what the number represents, and simply speak to the combination of those two. Or learning that 9 is the penultimate number in the sequence of ace to 10, and what it means to be a bigger number or one that is near the end of the suit. So all of these things are really important, and we can forget about learning that if we're not taking a tarot course, and just memorize meanings without really thinking about the pieces that come together to make that story in the first place. And if you are interested in working with me, I do have a beginner tarot course on my website. And this is exactly what we do in the course, is we learn about the elements. We learn about our personal associations and relationships with the elements. And I love this Chariot card. It has water in it. It has water associations. And then piece together all the bits and pieces. It's like we take it apart and then we put it together again in understanding the mandala of the tarot. And this is just one example of a pip deck that does a good job of representing what normally comes in much more complicated artwork. The Trinity Tarot by Ari Weisner. And the last deck in this episode is a self-published deck. This is the Wayhome Tarot by Bakara Wintner. And like the others, there's multiple reasons for selecting this deck in this video. It is a pippish deck. So you can see that in the minor arcana, we are shown the meaning of the card through the arrangement of the element, color, shape, and symbol. Two of Wands. Together, they come together, and there is a spark of energy. Before I forget, another reason for selecting this deck has to do with the guidebook, which doesn't come with it. It's a separate reference book, and it's called WTF is Tarot. And it is a really easy read. It is hilarious. And the best part of that guidebook is the chapter on the court cards. And Bakara does such a good job at a beginner level in helping you to understand what the court cards represent. And I remember the first time I read that book, I laughed. I laughed all the way through, and yet found great insight. And it was really refreshing too, in that when Bakara created this deck with Autumn and wrote that book, she was very early in her tarot journey. And it's amazing what a relatively inexperienced tarotist was able to create. And I love the colors in this deck. And like all of the decks I have shown you, there is a simplicity in the arrangement of everything in the artwork to build deeper understanding. And all of the court cards are in silhouette. And I think this one is my favorite, where we see the wise woman. She looks a bit like a shaman within the energy body of a contemporary Queen of Wands. So let us go to, this is the Six of Wands, is beautiful too. And this Four of Wands. So this is a really great, I have a couple of decks that arrange the Four of Wands into this particular shape. And I think what is captured here is quite powerful compared to the Waite Smith artwork as well. This Eight of Wands, my goodness. Yeah, I really like this deck. So in the Six of Cups, there are little bits and pieces that I take time to reflect on. And sometimes when I'm reading this card, I might see flowers. Other times I might see martini glass. And depending on who I'm reading for, I have an ability to expand my story in a different direction. So do you remember what I said about some contemporary decks are so very, very specific? It's really hard to get away from what we're seeing in the picture. Well, this deck doesn't do that. It allows us to create our own story. And maybe you know a thing or two about jellyfish, and you can build that in as well. This Son of Cups is almost haunting this cave within. And he's slightly bowed forward in his humility or maybe even his sadness. And I know there are some contemporary decks that you really feel the quartz in the suit of cups have a tendency towards alcohol, over imbibing, and you may read that into this as well too. You may read this as a cleansing glass of fresh water. Father of Cups. There's a luminescence to some of these cards, and I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but it really shines through. And in the two upper cups, it's shining within the full cups, and it has been released from the lower three cups. And so you can build a story, like I said before, based on A plus B plus C, rather than memorizing meanings. You can see the ground here is dry. There's no water in the creek bed. The sky is gray, very different from the energy of the Nine of Cups, where there is plenty of water. The 9 cups are in a hammock. The sunset radiates through the clouds. And so you really get a feeling. Daughter of Cups is beautiful too. And yes, we have an Ice Queen for the Mother of Swords, which fits very well into her description in WTF is Tarot. This is quite clever as well. I'm actually going to leave this one out. I have a new student coming and I want to share this deck. And this one, this is 9 of Swords. You may see factory smokestacks. You might see something else. This might be, if you are an environmentalist, an activist, your greatest nightmare. But there's also a different feeling that might come through here. Maybe a call to action or something. I feel like the 9 of Swords is quite understudied. And in some of her cards, she is making some very powerful statements, and this is one of them. And you will have a hard time finding correspondence between what's going on in this card and what you see with a human with 10 swords in their back in another deck. And so I think it's good because it's going to take you into some journaling and deeper reflection about what this might represent for you in any given time. And also as a beginner, it's really important to remember that each and every one of these cards is in response to a question. This card doesn't mean anything unless you ask a question, and then it gives it meaning. We can't respond without a question. That's not a tarot reading, and I try to do that in my classes, have you practice speaking and responding to the cards each and every class, practicing. So I think this is a really fun deck for beginners, and you can get some pretty potent messages through this brilliant artwork. This is the Wayhome Tarot by Bakara Wintner and Autumn Whitehurst. And here's one more look at all of these decks together. This is the 8 of Pentacles, Wayhome Tarot, Spirit Within, Trinity, and Lili Black. And I hope some of these comments I've made today are food for thought in regards to what is important in building your tarot practice as a beginner. Thanks for watching. Take good care. Namaste.